girls. We are going to be talking about simplest form. We're pulling all of the different skills that we've been talking about in Chapter 9 together, and we're going to look at fractions and then be able to rename them in simplest form. There's more information on simplest form on page 386 in your student reference book. So, with that, we're going to dive right into it. We're going to be able to write fractions in simplest form. I always tell my kids, you would never say to your moms and dads that a recipe calls for 4/8 of a cup of sugar. You'd never see that in a recipe book. That's because we don't typically name things in fractions other than in simplest form. You'd say, the recipe calls for 1/2 of a cup of sugar. And so we're going to practice that skill today. Simplest form. We'll talk a lot about that. Zhang had a ribbon 24 inches long. Ermi had a ribbon 36 inches long. Zhang's ribbon is 24/36 the length of Ermi's ribbon. And then they give us this fraction, write 24 over 36 in simplest form. Okay, the way that we are going to attack this problem is we're going to look at factors of 24, and we're going to look at factors of 36. Okay, and then we're going to find the greatest common factor, the GCF, and we're going to divide 24 over 36 by the greatest common factor. That's one way to do it. So let's list factors of 24. I know that 1 times 24 goes into it. I know it's an even number, so 2 and 12. I think about 3. I know that 3 goes into 24 8 times. 3 times 8 is 24. And I also know that 4 times 6 is 24. So our factors are listed there. Then I list factors of 36. I know that 1 times 36 is 36. I know it's an even number, so 2 times 18 is 36. I know that, and we're going to talk about tricks to see about divisibility, but I know that 3 goes into 36 because if I add those digits up, same with 24, if I add the digits 36 up, I would get 9, and I know that 3 goes into 9. If 3 goes into the sum of the digits, then 3 goes into that number. So 3 goes into 36 12 times. I know that 4 times 9 is 36, and then I'm going to scrunch in 6 times 6. They're all kind of scrunched there, but we have to look at those numbers, and we have to find the greatest common factor. If I look down my kind of messy column, but I can make it out, I can see that 12 goes into both 24 and 36. If you find the greatest common factor, you just have to divide both the numerator and the denominator by that number. And again, as we learned in previous lesson, 12 over 12 is the same as dividing by 1, but we are just renaming it. So 24 divided by 12 is 2, and 36 divided by 12 is 3. Now I have to look at my fraction 2/3, and I have to re-look at that and think to myself, is there anything other than 1 that goes into both 2 and 3 that is the same? And I can't think of any. I know 2 is a prime number, 2 is that special even prime number, and 3 is a prime number. So I know that 2/3 is in simplest form. That's one way to do it. Or if you don't find the greatest common factor, if you have 24 over 36 and you looked at that and you said, you know what? I know it's an even over an even. I'm not exactly sure what the greatest common factor is, but I know that 2 goes into 24 and I know that 2 goes into 36. So I'm going to divide it by 2 and just see where I come out, okay? So if I divided 24 by 2, I would get 12. If I divided 36 by 2, I would get 18. And then I would look at those two numbers and I would say, you know what? That's an even over an even, so I can continue to divide that out. I can divide that again by 2. So I'm going to divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2. When I do that, 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, I have to look at it again. Each time you have to analyze it. I have to look at it here, I have to look at it here. Every time you look at it and think, are there any other factors other than 1 that go into both 6 and 9 that are the same? And I know that 3 goes into 6 and 3 goes into 9. So I'm going to divide it again by 3. And 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. They're just 1 apart. When the numerator is just one difference of 1 between the numerator and the denominator, then that's another thing that tells us that it is in simplest form. Okay, but I had to divide all of these times if you don't find the greatest common factor. And even if you think that you have found the greatest common factor, you need to make sure that you look at that. Oops, I got a little thing going on here. And analyze it, just in case you didn't find it. So, as we said, find the greatest common factor of the numerator and the denominator. We listed factors, and we said, you know what, 12 is the greatest factor. So we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator just like we did by 12, and we got 2/3. That was one way to find it. Okay, and here they're showing you that the equivalency between 24 over 36 is the same as 2/3 in terms of the value or the amount. Okay, now let's look at 48 over 56. If you're looking at those two numbers, you want to find factors of 48 and factors of 56. Okay, numbers that go into those numbers. Okay, so I know that 1 times 48 is 48. I know it's an even number, so I'm going to say 2 goes in there 24 times. 2 times 24 is 48. If I'm looking at these two numbers, and I have to think to myself, does 3 go into 48? I'm going to do that 3 check. I'm going to add the sum of the digits, and the sum of the digits is 12. So I know 3 goes into the sum of the digits, so 3 would go into 48. So 3 goes into 48 16 times. 3 times 16 is 48. Then I'm going to check 4. And in my mind, I can see that 4 times 12, look, I'm getting a little scrunch, is 48. I would check 5. It doesn't end in 0 or 5. 6 times 8 is 48. We know that one. I'm going to scrunch that up there. 6 times 8 is 48. And then I think we've found all of our factors of 48. If I look at 56, I'm going to list those. I'm going to say 1 times, I'm going to give myself a little extra room here. 1 times 56 is 56. It's even. So I know that 2 times 28 is 56. When I think about my threes trick, 5 plus 6 is 11. So I know 3 doesn't go into 11, so that does not go in there. 4, I can divide it out, or I can know that mentally 4 times, let's see, 14 is 56. Sometimes you have to scratch it out. You have to go like 56 divided by 4, and then we'll also go over some more tricks for that with you when we're practicing. 5 does not go into 56. It doesn't end in 0 or 5. And then I think about 6 going into 56. I know that 6 does not. I know then I think about 7. 7 times 8 is 56. And then I think we've listed all of our factors. So we're going to look at, find the greatest common factor of the two. And as I look at that, I see 8 is my greatest common factor. So I'm going to divide 48 and 56 by 8. So I'm going to say 48 divided by 8, 56 divided by 8. And I know that 48, 6 times 8 is 48, so this would be 6. And 56 divided by 8 is 7. So 6/7 is equivalent to 4856, and that would be letter C. All right, here they give us the fraction 20 over 28. I know that this fraction is not in simplest form. I can look at that in a glance and know that this is an even over an even, so for sure I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, okay? That's one way we talked about. You can find the greatest common factor, or you can do repeated division, okay? So if I were to say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and divide 20 by 2, and I'm going to divide the denominator by 2, and I would get 10 over 14. And then again, I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, you know what, that's still an even over an even. So I have to continue to divide. I know I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, and I would get 5/7. I look at 5/7, and I think about, well, I know 5 is a prime number, I know 7 is a prime number, so we know that the only factors of each of those are 1 in itself, therefore it is in simplest form. So 20/28 is equivalent to 5/7, and I found that by just doing repeated division, knowing that the 2 goes into both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so here we said these are common factors. They weren't the greatest common factor, but if we continue to divide, we came up with the same answer. Otherwise, you can look at 20/24, and I would say, you know what, I think 4 is my greatest common factor. If I divided 20 over 28, if I went right to my GCF, if I divided it by 4, I would go right away to 5/7. Okay, but otherwise you can use repeated division. But the main thing is to look at your answer each time and ask yourself, is there anything that goes into both the numerator and the denominator? And here they said, yep, 4 is my GCF. I'm going to divide by 4, and I still come up with the same answer. Either way is correct. The big key is to make sure that you are asking yourself, is that in simplest form? We're going to do one more, and then we're going to offer you the opportunity to do some extra practice on your own. So if we look at these two numbers, 21 over 63, all right, I would look at those and I would say, factors of 21 would be 1 and 21. I know 2 does not go into it. I know 3 times 7 is 21. And then I can't think of any others. I have this big gap here, but that's okay. I'm going to put a little comma there. All right. And then I'm going to list factors of 63. I know that 1 and 63. If I multiply those two numbers together, I would get 63. I know 2 does not go into 63 because it is an odd number. And I would find the greatest common factor. If I did find the greatest common factor, if I kept going, I would divide 21 by 7, and I would divide 63 by 7, and I would get 21 divided by 7 is 3.
Mrs. Yost?
Yes?
Can Max come back down?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send him. Thank you.
And then, actually, 21 is the greatest common factor. If I divided it right out, I would say 21 divided by itself would be 1. Sorry, I missed that greatest common factor. And 63 divided by 21 is 3. Another thing to do is to look at your numerator and think to yourself, does the numerator go into the denominator? And if that is the case, that is your greatest common factor. Okay, so then we came up with 1/3. All right, boys and girls, we have lots of practice. This is a skill that takes a lot of patience, but do your very best with it, and it will be fun. Thank you.